The pleasure and the dubious pleasure of probably repeating a lot of what has been said, so I'll try to be very quick. And one thing I'm going to try to do is, well, as you'll see, I have mostly pictures, so that should help. I think go through it fairly quickly. Why do I have? That wasn't part of my presentation. There you go. So let's start with the obvious. We have, as has been said by many people before, we have a fantastic public transportation system, the envy of many places in the world. Great rails system with a beautiful stations, high level of service, very extensive bus system, maybe too extensive, trams, minibuses. There's a very nice hierarchy of services, and obviously ferries, taxis, they all go wherever we want to go, at frequencies that we like, and give us very good service. And last but not least, a favor at the airport. I mean, that really is part of our public transport system, if you think of it. So it all works very well and serves us very well. But the question is, so we already have 90% public transportation use, which is, again, the highest in the world. It's most cities would consider that an unachievable goal, and that's a sustainable goal. So the question is, how can we do better? Or what is, where is the premium that we can still get on our sustainability from the public transport use? So I'll start with I say try walking, and I know everybody's been talking about it, but really the challenge in Hong Kong is that walking is a challenge. It's not something that the city invites us to do, and actually it's not just because it's congested, but because it's also very highly controlled. We're allowed to walk only in certain areas. And so, in fact, one of the really bizarre things about Hong Kong is that the only places where you're allowed to deviate from the walkway is where you board public transportation. So really we're channeled to walk in certain places, and the only place we're allowed to get off the limited pedestrian system is to board public transport. So that's a very kind of engineered and limited system. Of course, we have the pedestrian bridges, we all love them. Julian said, I think, how much people, obviously, I was being facetious, people don't love them. They're very, but we're forced to use them because of this, because of all the barriers. So, and you know, again, we are allowed to, they feed us into the PTIs and the MTR stations, and so we are kind of, herded towards public transportation. And then, we do have sometimes nicely landscaped walkways that no one uses because they're kind of, residual. They're on the side of roads. And, it's not either or. This is just a picture from Bogota in Colombia, just one of many. But, you can have actually a free pedestrian environment that is shared by public transport. It doesn't need to be this sort of, this is where public transport starts and pedestrians, feed into it. It can be much more fluid. So I want to take an example of New York just as an alternate, because New York, I said it elsewhere, I mean, New York is the antithesis of Hong Kong in terms of its historical development and how it supports pedestrian movement, and that's something just to think about. I'm not saying that Hong Kong is comparable, but if you look at New York, this was done in this was in 1811, someone had the vision to parcel out New York as big blocks, a regular grid. Hong Kong around the same time, I'm sorry, this is 100 years later, but Hong Kong evolved, started evolving sometime after New York, and in a very different way. So New York, for almost 200 years, has been laid out like this, and this is what it looks like today. It's a very, very regular network of streets that at street level look like this. So it supports unlimited movement for as long as you want. I mean, basically you can go to the tip of Manhattan and walk all the way up to Harlem and Washington Heights and not stop. And this is what you see. So it's a very fluid, continuous network of pedestrians. And the avenues, there are sometimes along Central Park, side streets, but it's all connected. There's no railings, there's nothing, you can just walk. You can walk and walk and walk. In Hong Kong, unfortunately our environment because of geography, but also because of planning. I mean, compare this to the area of New York. This is, the Hong Kong area. You can see different layers of history, some old urban areas, and then increasingly larger and larger blocks in new reclamation, and this kind of fortress called Hong Kong Station, surrounded by high-capacity roads. Obviously, your ability to move around this, and then, courtesy of highways, we have all these barriers and pedestrian bridges that try to make these connections work. So, well, in some of the old areas, we do have something that begins to resemble New York. Of course, you just take out the railings in terms of the freedom of movement. In most places, this is what we have, which sponsors, which really makes it very uninviting to walk. So, as an example, we looked at, sorry, this was a presentation that was supposed to be made at the Grand Hyatt. Paul in the last minute moved into French Club. Cost issues. But we looked at moving from the Grand Hyatt in New York to the Empire State Building, 650 meters. You can do it like this, right? Very, very easy. You can do it like that. You can do it in probably 500 different ways. And then we looked at going from the Grand Hyatt in Hong Kong to Pacific Place, 650 meters. You can do it. Well, first of all, we have to look at the railings, and then we have a few road crossings, and then we have pedestrian bridges. So you can do it like this. And what's not counted here is all the times you have to go up and down. And you can do it like that. We actually did look at it. There are exactly two ways of doing it. So, and when I'm faced with, in New York, this is what it feels like when you do it. In Hong Kong, it's either this or that. So, I mean, when I'm faced with these options, I just, I get on the bus or take a taxi. And that's my point.